Our next story today, it's been revealed that military police records of service personnel who were dismissed from the armed forces for being gay have been destroyed. Veterans that requested documents about investigations into their sexuality whilst actively serving the country had been told the files were deleted in 2010. Now, GBNews contacted the Ministry of Defence and they said, quote, "The historical policy prohibiting homosexuality in the armed forces was abhorrent, and we deeply regret that LGBT plus members serving in defence suffered injustice as a consequence. Our priority now is to understand the full impact of the historic ban and find appropriate ways to address the wrongs of the past." It continues, "The policy followed at the time was to remove references to these former offences and investigations from service records. There was a legal duty to ensure these records were erased from individuals' service records." Well, let's speak to Tremaine Cornish, who was a private in the Royal Army Catering Corps. He joined at the age of 15 and was dismissed in 1977 after being accused of being a homosexual. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning. It must be fairly traumatic to be going back over what was a deeply wrong dismissal. What has been your experience trying to get to the bottom of this investigation?
The Ministry of Defence and people within the military police obfuscated, to say the least. First of all, they said, yes, we'll look at it. We'll look into the papers. I asked for my main papers 5-6 years ago. Some came back. There's reference to the investigation, which went on for several months from 1976, when I was just 20, through till 77, when I was eventually thrown out. In my records, so there was reference there. And more recently, I've been in contact with the military police headquarters, and they said, yes, we'll get them to you. And then they said, we'll get them to you by a particular date. First of all, it was a corporal who responded, then a captain, and they said they would respond by the end of the following week. At the end of that week, I had a notification saying, oh, there isn't anything there. But given that they're saying that they were all destroyed in 2010, somebody is being less than forthright. This, though, isn't a surprise. I know from records that I've seen from the Ministry of Defence going back that they have a record of saying, yes, they're doing all that they can to help, but internal memos state give whatever help that they could get from somewhere else, but nothing more. So
is it your contention then
that many of us aren't entirely trusting of the MOD?
Is it your contention then that the MOD have been less than truthful now in terms of saying that these records were destroyed in 2010? Is it your contention that they were actually surviving 2010 and potentially have been destroyed later?
That's difficult to know. I just know that they, from records going back to around 2000 that I've seen in the National Archives, that they state, help this organisation, but don't give them too much help. It could well be that they've destroyed digital records that they might have had, because they stated delete, not destroy the records. That would be when the Conservative Party took over from the Labour Party and Liam Fox became the Secretary of State of Defence. Now, he's a known homophobe, it's on record.
What do you say to those? I'm sure.
All because we're an embarrassment.
I'm sure Liam Fox would deny those claims, but what do you say to those who say that perhaps it would be wrong of the army to keep all of this historical information. Perhaps there are some people who don't want reams of investigative notes on what they got up to being kept by the Ministry of Defence. Perhaps there are some people who'd rather the information and those sort of investigations were got rid of.
That may be the case, yes, but from long experience, given the age I am, I've seen various governments, they rarely do something because it's the right thing. They do it either to avoid negative press or to give themselves good press.
Now, just finally in this conversation, what does this all mean for you in practical terms? The sad reality that the Ministry of Defence is not providing you with the information you request. What's the consequence of that?
The consequence of that, if somebody later on, subsequent to the inquiry, asks for proof, then conveniently we won't be able to provide it. It's only our word against theirs.
It's a tricky situation.
We have each suffered loss, harm and damage. How's that to be repaired in any manner?
Well, Tremaine Cornish, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us this morning. It's a really fascinating case and, of course, a gross historic injustice that was handed down to you in the late 1970s. Thank you for taking the time and all the best with your continued campaigning.
And also all those others, many hundreds, probably thousands of service personnel who were destroyed, whose lives were destroyed and treated disgracefully with intimidating and grossly offensive interrogations. And this continues. We need more people to submit their evidence, not only those of us who were directly offended, but the clinicians and other service personnel.
Well, Tremaine Cornish, again, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be following any developments in that story as the days go on.